There are moments when the fate of an entire nation depends not on the number of its cannons, but on the power of its imagination. In 1942, as the sun scorched the sands of El Alamein in Egypt, the British Army was trapped in a desperate stalemate against the Desert Fox, General Erwin Rommel. Rommel's Nazi forces were disciplined, fast, and seemingly invincible. But the British had a secret weapon that didn't fire a single bullet. They had a magician. Jasper Maskelyne, a world-famous illusionist before the war, was tasked with the most impossible trick of his career: to make an entire army vanish in plain sight and reappear where the enemy least expected it. This is the story of Operation Bertram, the grandest magic show in military history, where shadows, plywood, and painted canvas became the tools that turned the tide of World War II. General Bernard Montgomery, the new and dogged commander of the British Eighth Army, faced a mathematical problem that seemed insoluble to traditional military minds. He needed to attack with everything in the northern sector of El Alamein, but Rommel was already waiting for him exactly there, with fortified defenses and landmines known as the Devil's Gardens. If Montgomery attacked with brute force, it would be a mass suicide. The only chance for victory was to convince Rommel that the main assault would come from the south, and that it would only happen weeks after the actual date. But how do you hide the movement of 700 heavy tanks and the entire logistical infrastructure of a modern army in a flat desert where there isn't a single tree, hill, or shadow to hide from German aviation? This was where Brigadier Dudley Clark's bold vision met Jasper Maskelyne's eccentric talent, giving birth to a secret department known as a force. Clark knew that in the desert, information was more lethal than gunpowder. Maskelyne, bringing the techniques of the London stage to the front lines, transformed into the director of a massive theatrical production spanning hundreds of square kilometers. The first and most brilliant invention of this unit was what they dubbed the Sunshield. These were lightweight structures made of palmwood frames and painted canvas covers with colors that blended into the sand, hinged for quick assembly over British battle tanks. From above, to a Luftwaffe reconnaissance pilot, flying at 1,000 feet, a 30-ton tank carrying a deadly cannon simply vanished, transforming into the harmless silhouette of a common supply truck. Montgomery silently moved 700 of these trucks to the north during the freezing desert nights, while the Germans photographed the area during the day and confidently reported to their headquarters that no armored units were moving there. But Maskelyne's genius went further. He realized that if the tanks disappeared in the north, they needed to appear somewhere else to maintain the illusion of a static force. Thus, he and his team created Cannibals and dummy tanks. Thousands of fake tanks built from palm branches, calico, and camouflage paint were positioned in the southern sector of the desert, where not a single real tank existed. They even used special devices to rake the sand and create fake tank tracks, simulating the heavy movement of a division that was in reality made of straw and wind. But for Montgomery to achieve a decisive victory, he needed to gain something more precious than ground. He needed to gain time. He needed Rommel to believe the British were not yet ready. This was where Operation Bertram reached its most cinematic level, with the construction of the Misheifa Railway and the phantom water pipeline known as Operation Diamond. In the south, where Maskelyne had already planted his army of straw, the British began building an entire 10-kilometer railway line in the middle of the desert, complete with fake freight cars and wooden locomotives that emitted real smoke from hidden kerosene boilers. The goal was to create what Dudley Clark called a physical calendar for the enemy. Rommel monitored the railway's progress and calculated that based on construction speed, the British wouldn't have enough supplies for a mass attack until late November. Meanwhile, in Operation Diamond, kilometers of pipeline made from empty gasoline cans and canvas were installed ostentatiously during the day, advancing only 8 kilometers daily to confirm the German theory that the attack was far from happening. The blow was perfect. Rommel, a master of logistics, fell into the trap of logic. He convinced himself that no one, not even Montgomery, would be crazy enough to launch a general offensive before the water and railway infrastructure was completed in the southern sector. Confident that he had weeks of calm ahead, the Desert Fox, who was suffering from exhaustion and health issues, decided to take medical leave for treatment in Germany, leaving El Alamein's command in the hands of generals who believed they were protected by a time advantage that was, in reality, just a British house of cards. Maskelyne's magic show hadn't just deceived Rommel's eyes. It had hijacked his own tactical judgment, removing Hitler's most dangerous general from the battlefield at the exact moment the desert curtains were about to open for the final climax. On the night of October 23rd, 1942, reality suddenly collided with illusion. The El Alamein desert exploded in a cacophony of fire and metal that no one in German command could have imagined. In the north, where aerial photos showed only harmless supply trucks, British tanks discarded their Sunshield canvas covers and revealed hundreds of cannons ready to spit fire. In the south, German troops sat paralyzed in their trenches, waiting for an attack from 1,000 tanks that would never come, for they were merely the rubber and palm armies the Magic Gang had planted to haunt their dreams. In a moment of absolute panic, Acting General Georg Stumme died of a heart attack amidst the chaos, leaving Axis forces leaderless, while Montgomery's real tanks advanced like ghosts over German lines. Rommel managed to return to Egypt only 2 days later, but upon his arrival, he found a mutilated army with empty fuel depots and his men's morale shattered by the shock of having been so humiliatingly deceived. El Alamein was the first great British victory of the war, the day the myth of Rommel's invincibility was finally shattered before the world. Winston Churchill, with his immortal rhetoric, would later tell Parliament, "Before El Alamein, we never had a victory. After El Alamein, we never had a defeat. But victory was not won with gunpowder and blood alone. It was won because a magician from London and a team of artists had the courage to treat the world's most brutal battlefield as if it were a theater stage. They proved that the greatest power of a free nation lies not only in the brute force of its metal, but in the infinite audacity of its imagination." Operation Bertram was the proof that a well-executed show can change the course of civilization, turning artists and illusionists into war heroes whose weapons were made of paint, shadows, and hope.